a little bit longer with the family because obviously I've got no fight news, and then I just thought I'd come back. I miss this place when I'm not here, so yeah, I'm excited to get back training again.
The drama surrounding Dakota Ditcheva never came from trash talk, scandals, or the loud theatrics that so many modern fighters lean on. It came from the silence around her, the quiet confidence that wrapped itself around every step she took toward the cage. What fascinated people wasn't what she said, but what she didn't. Because when she entered an arena, something shifted in the atmosphere. It felt as if thousands of people instinctively held their breath, waiting to see what the newest, coldest force in women's MMA would do next. And on the night she faced Paula Bittencourt, the world discovered exactly why this silence had weight. Long before the first strike was thrown, the Etihad Arena felt like it was balancing on a blade. The noise was there, roaring and vibrant, yet underneath it all, there was a tension that didn't belong to excitement alone. It was the tension of witnessing something inevitable, a performance building toward a moment that would ripple across the sport. When Dakota stepped into the cage that night, she didn't posture or glare or pace with hunger. She simply existed in a kind of deadly stillness, as though the chaos to come had already been decided inside her mind. Across from her, Paula Bittencourt tried to remain composed, tried to steady the nerves swirling behind her eyes. She had fought tough women before. She had survived wars in cages on multiple continents. She had taken damage that would fold most fighters and come back with a grin. But Dakota wasn't like the women she'd fought before, and deep down, everyone in the building understood that. They were witnessing a collision of styles, yes, but more importantly, a collision of destinies, one already carved, and one fighting desperately not to be crushed beneath it. The bell rang. And instantly, everything shifted. Dakota didn't move like someone beginning a fight. She moved like someone continuing a process already in motion, as though the round had started before the referee ever spoke. Her footwork sliced across the canvas with the precision of a blade. Each bounce, each turn of the hip, each feint was measured. Paula stepped forward, attempting to clinch, to drag Dakota into the kind of gritty fight where experience mattered more than elegance. But Dakota wasn't there when Paula reached. She wasn't just avoiding strikes. She was erasing opportunities. From the first exchange, it was obvious that Dakota wasn't simply fighting. She was dissecting. Every reaction Paula gave was stored, analyzed, and weaponized within seconds. Dakota tested her with jabs, soft touches meant not to harm but to gather information. Paula lunged, trying to force her way into the pocket, but Dakota's timing separated them like two competing worlds. The Brit flowed around her opponent with footwork that belonged more to a dancer than a fighter, except her dance was choreographed in violence. Then came the moment the entire arena would replay in their minds for weeks afterward. A feint, a tilt of the shoulder, a shift in rhythm, and then the launch. Dakota's shin rose with the precision of a sniper's bullet, crashing into the side of Paula's head. It wasn't a wild kick. It wasn't thrown with desperation. It was timed with brutal clarity, landing exactly where and when it needed to. The sound echoed like a gunshot in a tunnel. Paula's body twisted, collapsing in a single, heartbreaking motion as the arena gasped. The referee dove in instantly, waving his hands, but it was already done. In that split second, the world of MMA froze. Not because knockouts were rare, but because knockouts with that kind of efficiency, calmness, and precision were rare. The commentators stumbled over their words, trying to balance shock with professionalism. Fans in the crowd stared in disbelief, unsure whether to cheer, gasp, or simply attempt to process what they had witnessed. And at the center of the chaos, Dakota stood like a statue, breathing steady, expression unchanged, her eyes surveying the aftermath with the coldness of someone who had expected every second of it. At just 23 years old, Dakota Ditcheva had announced not just her presence but her inevitability. Yet that moment, as explosive as it was only a single chapter in a much larger story. Because everything she delivered that night wasn't the result of talent alone. It was the culmination of a lifetime spent immersed in a world where combat wasn't violence, it was language. Dakota didn't stumble into martial arts. She was born into it. Her mother, Lisa Howarth, wasn't just a coach or a parental figure cheering from the sidelines. She was British Muay Thai royalty, a champion who carved her own era long before Dakota ever laced up gloves. For Dakota, the sounds of training weren't unfamiliar. They were the soundtrack of childhood. She grew up hearing pads snap under the force of kicks, ropes whipping against sweat-covered mats, the hum of exhausted fighters breathing through their final rounds. By 4 years old, she was kicking pads taller than her. By 10, she was reading opponents the way most children read storybooks, tracking rhythm, timing breath, predicting movement. While other kids played games, Dakota played with patterns, studying fighters in the gym with a seriousness far beyond her age. The northern fight scene in England wasn't glamorous. It was gritty, honest, often unforgiving, the type of environment that forced fighters to earn every bit of respect they hoped to receive. It shaped her into someone who didn't fear pressure. She was carved by it. By 19, Dakota had already conquered Muay Thai, claiming national and world championships. But the medals felt temporary. The hunger inside her didn't fade with victory. She wanted something bigger, not attention, not money, but evolution. It was that hunger that whispered to her when she chose to step away from the dominance she had built and walk into a new world entirely. Mixed martial arts. It was like learning to breathe underwater. Every instinct she had sharpened for years needed rewriting. Striking was familiar. Grappling was not. Jiu-jitsu felt foreign. The ground felt chaotic. But Dakota didn't shy away from discomfort. She moved into it with the same cold curiosity she brought to every fight. At Manchester Top Team, she absorbed knowledge at a pace that startled coaches. Wrestling sessions that broke others left her thoughtful, eyes narrowed not in frustration but in calculation. She loved the grind. The sweat. The endless drilling. The moments of frustration that preceded breakthroughs. 4 amateur fights. 4 wins. No losses. But even then, silence surrounded her. Not from doubt, but from discipline. Dakota wasn't announcing herself to the world. She was preparing for it. When she went professional in 2021, she wasn't the inexperienced newcomer people expected. She was a storm waiting for the horizon. Fight by fight, she dismantled opponents with a calmness rarely seen in new pros. Critics noticed her composure. Fans noticed her brutality. But Dakota noticed none of it. Hype wasn't her destination. Perfection was. She didn't crave applause. She craved improvement. And that's what made the night against Paula Bittencourt so significant. It wasn't supposed to be historic. It was meant to be another stepping stone, another test. Paula was a veteran, tough, relentless, experienced in the kind of wars that burned both fighters and spectators. But from the opening exchange, it was clear they weren't on the same timeline. Dakota's striking was too sharp, her defense too fluid, her reactions too quick. Paula pushed forward, searching for a way inside, but Dakota's low kick sent vibrations up her leg, breaking rhythm and resolve. The Brit circled like a predator with patience, never rushing, never desperately seeking the finish. It wasn't emotional. It was inevitable. Even when the fight touched the ground, something many expected to test Dakota, she dominated. Her transitions were smooth. Her control felt suffocating. She reversed positions with the same elegance she brought to her striking, mounting Paula and raining down calculated shots, not wild, not chaotic, but precise. When the final bell rang and Paula's battered face told the entire story, it wasn't the decision that mattered. It was the image of Dakota inside the cage earlier that night, her shin connecting with Paula's skull in a moment that looked less like a strike and more like destiny. In the days that followed, headlines called it the head kick heard around the world. Analysts slowed the footage down frame by frame, studying the angle of Dakota's hip, the fraction of a second that Paula's guard dipped, the way Dakota's eyes tracked her opponent even before launching the kick. To some, it looked like instinct. To Dakota, it was math. Repetition layered on repetition. Technique layered on instinct layered on discipline. She sat in interviews afterward with the same calm that defined her performances. Soft-spoken, humble, almost detached from the chaos swirling around her rise. "I'm just doing what I've always done," she said. But behind the modesty was a quiet confidence, the kind found in those who know their ceiling lies far beyond what the world has seen. Back home in Manchester, her gym walls filled with new faces, young fighters who watched her highlight reel with awe, little girls who kicked pads imagining themselves someday stepping into a cage under bright lights. She had become a symbol without ever trying to. Her rise was a beacon of what discipline without ego could achieve. Even her teammates saw it clearly. One of her closest training partners once said, "She doesn't talk about fame or money. She talks about getting better. That's it." And that simplicity, that purity, is what separated her from so many others climbing the same ladder. While others chased attention, Dakota chased mastery. Soon the question echoed louder and louder across the MMA world: was it time for Dakota to enter the UFC? Promoters hinted. Journalists projected. Fans demanded. Yet Dakota remained patient, resisting the gravitational pull of premature glory. She wasn't afraid of the UFC. She was preparing for it. She refused to be rushed. She understood the cost of entering the spotlight too early. The sport had seen countless prospects crumble under weight they weren't ready to carry. Dakota wasn't going to be one of them. Her dream wasn't to join the UFC. Her dream was to conquer it. Until that time comes, she fights across continents, from Dubai to Canada to Europe, carrying with her the legacy of a family sharpened in Muay Thai and a discipline carved through silence. Every strike she throws is not just a weapon. It's a piece of history, a continuation of a lineage that began long before she was born. The head kick that shattered Paula Bittencourt wasn't a finale. It was a beginning, an announcement that the next era of women's MMA had already arrived, whether the world was ready or not. As her story unfolds, Dakota Ditcheva stands poised not just to be a great fighter but to be a legendary one. Because greatness isn't built from talent alone. It's built from vision, determination, obsession. The willingness to leave comfort behind and step into evolution again and again. Dakota doesn't see fighting as violence. She sees it as expression, a language spoken through motion, timing, and impact. A language understood only by those brave enough to step into the fire.